Hello friends, welcome to Coding Garden with CJ. In this episode, I'm going to build a Trello clone. Let's get right into it. So if you're not familiar with Trello, it is essentially, you can create Kanban boards with it and manage projects with it. So on the Trello website, you can create boards. So you have lots of different boards. Let's just create a new one. And then on a board, you can add lists. Typically, Kanban style is like to do, doing, and done. And then for each list, you can add cards. Some questions in the chat. I'm getting started right now. And I see, whoa, is it because of my new haircut? I did decide to cut my hair the other day. And you can add cards. So a card, it can be like user stories, but it's typically like tasks. So like set up server folder, set up client folder. As a user, I want something so that something. And so you have your cards here, and inside of a card, you can add a description, you can add comments, you can assign a specific person to that card. And then when you're working on it, you move it to the doing column. And then when you're done with it, you move it to the done column. Of course, you can create other lists. This is live. Yes, Andrew, this is live. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So you can create lists. You can also like rearrange your lists if you wanted to, but this makes sense for to do, doing, and done. Add new lists, cards, and I believe cards can then be archived as well. And then an archive card disappears. So I'm going to attempt to recreate this from scratch using Vue.js, Vuetify.js, and Feathers.js. So I have a list of all the things I need to do. So I'm going to generate a server using Feathers.js. I'm going to generate a client using the Vue CLI. I am going to, we're going to have just basic local auth using the built-in Feathers generator. And then I'm going to attempt to use Feathers Vuex. I've never used it before. I've been looking at the documentation, and where are we at? Is it this? Yes. And it looks really awesome. Like essentially you could have a service in your store and it automatically syncs up with the backend service. We'll figure it out. We might run into issues, but that seems like it'll be fun. We'll create like a login page. We'll get logged in. Then the user can add boards. So you can create, see your boards, and then view an individual board. Then we're going to do the same thing for lists. So you can see all the lists on a board. So you can create one, list them. Wait. And then I guess for this, you don't view a specific list because all of the lists are visible on the page itself. And then same thing for cards. So on a given list, you can create a card. You can then list all of the cards on a given list and then view a specific card to see its description. I'm going to attempt to get all of that working so we can create boards, we can create lists, we can create cards before I try to add the draggable cards and things like that. Once we get there, I'm going to use Vue.js draggable. And then be able to add other members to the board. So the idea is you can collaborate on a project with other users. And there are some, so this is my break timer. There are some questions in the chat. So from Andrew, don't mean to sidetrack you, but will you talk about why you chose Vuetify and Feathers? Yeah, I can definitely, maybe I probably won't go too far into depth, but yes, I will talk about first like what they are and why I'm using them, definitely. Then we'll add being able to rearrange lists. Then we'll add activities. So on a Trello board, it keeps track of like all the things that happen. So like when you create a board, there's a log of that. When you add a list, when you add a card, when you move a card, there's like an activity log. So I want to add that so that way anything that happens, we'll be able to see a list of what happened. Then we can assign specific members to cards. This is great for projects because you can know that a specific user is like the owner or the person doing that card. And then lastly, add comments. This is a lot of stuff. I don't know how long it's going to take me. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it all tonight. I'm going to code for as long as I can, I think, and kind of get that going. I have created an entity relationship diagram. So there's quite a bit of things going on in our app. So first we have users because they can log in, and then we have boards. A user can have many boards, and a board has a specific owner ID. Board just has a name, a background. This could probably either be a color or a URL. A board can have many activities. These are all the things that are done to it. A board can have many lists. A list has a name, its specific order, the board ID that it belongs to, and then whether or not it's archived. And then a list can have many cards. A card is going to have a title, a description, an order, and a list ID, so I know which list that card belongs to. And members will be like an array. I'm going to do this with Mongo. And then whether or not a card is archived. And then a comment has a card ID and a user ID and some text on it. So it's fairly complex. I do plan to use Mongoose. This is like this does show relationships between document stores, but I really like the built-in schema validation with Mongoose, and also it gets generated for you with Feathers.js. So this is my plan. Let's get into it. So first thing is to generate the server. For this, I am going to be using Feathers.js. So Feathers.js is a framework for building real-time backend applications. It is built on top of Express. So a lot of the things you'll see in there are basically how Express does things, but it adds things on top of it. So it makes it really easy to create new routes, to add authentication, to use many of the different plugins that are available for it. I believe, yes, this. So these are many different hooks. I'll talk about what a hook is, different things you can add into your app that are already ready to go for you. Essentially, like if you're building an app from scratch with Express, you have to do a lot. You have to do a lot of setup. But with Feathers.js, a lot of that is done for you, and you can just use simple commands to get it going. The other thing I mentioned is it's real time. So if you are collaborating on like a Trello board and you drag a card from one list to another, if someone else is logged in, they actually see that happen. So the real-time aspect of Feathers.js is going to allow us to do that, because all of our data will be in sync. So if anyone else is logged in, they'll see when new cards get created, when cards get moved, when new lists get created, that kind of thing. It uses Socket.io under the hood for that, but you have some other options as well. Yes, I am going to be using Mongo. I'll be using Mongoose, which is a library that lets you talk to MongoDB. Yep, and then that's that. So let's create the application. So you can install the Feather CLI globally. You can also use npx. I have it installed globally and the latest version. So I'm going to make a server directory. And then in here, I'm going to do Feathers G app. So Feathers generate app. We'll call it Trello clone. Oh, actually, I don't want to do this because I want to be in the server folder, because I'm going to have two separate folders. I'll have my backend Feathers app in the server folder, and then I'll have the Vue client in a client folder. So in the server folder is where I'm going to generate the app. Let's call this Trello clone server. A Trello clone. We'll use npm. So what's cool about Feathers is you can generate services and they'll be available either via REST. So you can use like Postman, or you can use Fetch or Ajax to talk to your services, but also you can set it up with real-time sockets. The client I'm going to be installing for Feathers automatically handles all of this. We'll have to set up the connection. But by just enabling these two things, I can talk to my Feathers API in either way. Cool, so that will create my app. All right, it's ready to go. And I believe if we do npm start, that will start up the Feathers app on port 3030. We have a basic Feathers application. Just real quick, I'm going to install NodeMon. NodeMon is a tool that automatically refreshes your node server if things change. Feathers doesn't come with that by default, so npm install -- save dev NodeMon. Cool, it's installed. And we can see in the server folder in our package.json there is a start script that uses Node. We're going to create a dev script. Whoa, not that. We are going to create a dev script that uses NodeMon. Okay, I'm not used to my keyboard, and I'm also not used to VS Code, so this is going to be fun. I usually use Atom. I've decided to switch. I don't know if it's going to be permanent or not, but we'll see. So now I can do npm run dev. That starts up NodeMon. Our app is still listening. Cool. Good to go. Now let's generate the client. So I'm going to go up one directory. I'm going to use npx at Vue/CLI. So this is the Vue CLI version 3. We're going to create Trello clone. Well, we'll just call it client because it'll create a folder called client. And let's check off the first thing. So we generated the server. Good to go. All right, let's choose our options. So I want the router. I want Vuex. We'll include the preprocessors, linter and formatter, and no testing today. Sorry, test people. I am going to be using Vuetify, so I might as well choose stylus. I do plan on using like the built-in styles, but oh well, we'll use stylus. So we'll do ESLint Airbnb, lint on save, and lint and fix on commit. We'll put all of our configs in the package JSON. Go. So that's happening. Actually, I do need to add something to my list. I also need to add Vuetify to client. I'm going to try to use the Vue CLI Vuetify plugin. Don't know if it's going to work, but we'll see. So I have generated the client. Let's go in there and make sure that it works. So we should have a Vue app running on port 8080. There it is. Very cool. And yeah, now let's add localauth to the server. So I'm going to go back into the server directory. And Feathers has a generate command called authentication. So if I do feathers.g authentication, this will add authentication. You can do social auth as well. For now, I'm just going to choose username and password. It'll use localauth. You can give it the name of the entity. In this case, it's just going to be users. And I'm going to use Mongoose as my provider. You saw there that they have lots of other providers, so you can use NeoDB, Connects, Sequelize. So you have lots of options for what your backend server is. Thanks, Emmy. You choose your database connection. It's totally fine with me. And then it will generate authentication. Cool. So I do have MongoDB installed and running on my machine. If you're on a Mac, you can do brew install. I think it's Mongo or MongoDB. You can Google it, but it's already running and already installed on my machine. So this should be able to connect to it automatically. We'll probably need to kill that, just kill the server, rerun it because we generated auth, and let's see what got generated. And also, let's take a quick tour of the backend app. So this is what gets generated when you create a Feathers app. If you look in the source directory, this is where all of your code goes. If you look at app.js, you can see that it is simply just an Express app. So we're bringing in Feathers Express. This is their special version of Express that adds some things onto it. But it's basically just an Express app set up like you've seen every other Express app, but it has lots of stuff by default. So it has compression enabled, it has cores enabled, it has Helmet, which is setting secure headers. all of this stuff is totally set up for us. And then when I generated authentication, it created this file, which automatically sets up JSON Web Token authentication. And local is like local auth with just like username and password. This is my break timer. Let's take a quick break. Yeah, so that got generated. You'll notice that this is looking at config.strategies. The config folder has all of the information about connecting to the database and information about generating web tokens and things like that. Also by default, all of the services that it generates have pagination enabled, meaning they'll only show 10 records at a time. I don't want to have to paginate. I'm going to set this to like 500 and then max is like 1,000. So when I'm requesting my resources, up to 500 will come back in the request. In production, I probably wouldn't do this, but I don't want to have to implement pagination, especially because I want to be able to like request all of the cards for a given list or for a given board. It has a default secret setup for authentication, the path for authentication, how to set up JSON Web Tokens. Let's change this real quick. So let's do the audience is board.coding.garden because we're creating a board. I don't know. Subject, let's just say auth. Issuer is coding garden, expires in 1 day. Cool. The entity is user. That's the model that got generated. Username field will be email and password field will be password. Cool. And actually we can update that. So I don't think I'll require the user to enter an email. We'll just have them enter in a username. So if you look in models, we can see that the user's model got generated. And this is a Mongoose schema. And here's what we'll do. Yeah, so we'll make this username instead of email. And then if we look at my schema, this thing. So we need, well, we'll change it to username. Password, we want a display name that will be required. Yeah, we can set up the formatting too. So this will be display name. It's a string. It doesn't have to be unique. What else? And like an image URL for the user so we could show a nice little avatar. Unique is true, but display name will be required. And then we'll also have image URL. That's required. I mean, password should be required too, so we'll add that. And I think we're good to go. So you'll notice this is using Mongoose. This is using their schema creation. If, probably in a bit we'll look at their documentation. But for now we don't need to do anything special. And by setting up timestamps, it will automatically add when this was created and anytime it gets updated. So that's good to go. Yeah, and then we'll need to update our config. So instead of looking at email, it should look at username. Cool. I think that's good for the user's entity. So yeah, we have auth, we have an updated user's model. You can also see when we generated the user service, it generated this user service. Just has its default options, so it mounts it on the correct route. Adds in pagination, brings in the model, all that good stuff. We don't really have to touch any of that. So let's add Vuetify to our client. Here. Okay, so I'm in the client folder. Because I'm using the Vue CLI, there is a, what is it? A Vuetify CLI plugin. So let's try it. If I do npx add Vuetify, maybe this will work. Let's see. So there is a plugin published on npm called like Vue CLI plugin Vuetify, and when you use this add command, yeah, so there it is, Vue CLI plugin Vuetify, and the add command automatically looks for something on npm with that name, including Vuetify, and now it'll just automatically set it up and add it to my app. Okay, so successfully installed plugin, allow Vuetify to replace app.vue and hello world. Sure, I have not done anything with that. They'll create like a basic layout with Vuetify. No custom theme for now, no a la carte components, and away it goes. Cool, so it actually updated my package JSON to install Vuetify. It updated all of these other things. I think like let's look what it up and see what it updated. So I believe it updated index.html to add like the font icons, and then so font and then also material icons, and then it added and updated app.vue. So now our app.vue automatically has like a default Vuetify layout. That's cool. Main.js is automatically bringing in Vuetify. You'll notice that they're not using my style, so they didn't have the linting there. So, well, I need to move that up there and move that up there. Cool. So it automatically imported it in, imported the styles, used it, and if we go to the browser, I should have a basic, yeah, look, I got a basic Vuetify app just by that one command, which is pretty sweet. Okay, so we added Vuetify. In a bit, we're going to go in and like customize the layout and stuff like that, but now let's add Feathers Vuex. So this is a essentially a module for bringing Feather services into your Vuex store. So let's go to the guide. How do we get set up? Not that. API overview, installation. Okay, so I'm going to need to install Feathers Vuex. Let me make sure, yeah, so my client is using npm. Sometimes it uses yarn, so it's using npm. So in the client folder, I can add Feathers Vuex. And then I'll need to set up a Feathers client. I may need to install these other Feathers dependencies as well. But like in the source folder in my client, let's create a new file and call it feathers-client.js. It's going to have all of these things. And I believe I will have to install all these other packages as well. Trailing comma. Okay, and what's this complaining about? New line required at the end of the file, but not found. There you go. And this is just our basic connection to our backend server. So Feathers is brought in from the Feathers package. We're including the socket.io transport, and we're including auth, and then we're actually just including the socket.io client. This then creates a new Feathers client, configures it with socket.io and with auth. But we also need these packages. I believe if I just install at Feathers.js, we'll get access to it. Let me double check. Let's just look at their documentation directly. So if we look at API client usage, Feathers can be used on the client through the individual modules or the Feathers.js client module. The latter combines all modules mentioned above into a single ES5 transpiled version. Yeah, I guess they're installing all of these separate. I'll just do that. So we need Feathers Socket.io client and then Feathers Socket.io client and then regular Socket.io client. So Feathers Socket.io client, Socket-io client, and then we also need the authentication client. Go. And I am doing this in the client folder. This is my Vue.js application. Hey Brooks, thanks. Appreciate it. Okay, so those are installed. Linter errors are gone. Back to the Feathers Vuex documentation. Okay, so this is our basic setup to connect to Feathers from the client. Now we need to set up the store. So let's bring in this stuff, and then we will take a look. So we generated the app with Vuex, so it automatically created just this basic Vuex store, so that's cool. But we also need to bring in this stuff. So bring in Feathers Vuex, bring in, and in this case, we'll just bring in Feathers client, which is in the same folder. And where's service coming from? Oh, it's saying they're defined but never used. So this is creating a new instance of Feathers Vuex with that specific client. Let's see, what is the ID field? Not sure what that is used for. We'll leave it. Vue.use Vuex is already happening. And then we need to use Feathers Vuex right after that. I think this wants a trailing comma. Okay. And then we add our services to the Vuex store. Yeah, for right now, all we want is auth. So we'll get rid of service. And then in a bit, when we actually generate a service, we'll add that in. So don't need anything else in my store. I'm just going to have auth. And the user service is users. What is this complaining about? Expected what? Oh, this needs to, I'm sorry, this needs to go under plugins. So I need to have plugins, which is an array. And essentially, Feathers Vuex provides Vuex plugins to get access to them. So, cool. Trailing comma, I think. Yeah. Okay, so our Vuex store is super basic right now. It's just bringing in auth, which was provided by Feathers Vuex, and we're telling it that our user service is users, which we set up on the back end. Cool. I believe that's all we need for now. Let's take a look at their auth module API. Okay, so the auth module helps you set up login and logout. It includes the following state by default: access token, payload, is authenticating. So by just including that plugin, we automatically get these properties, which we can like use in our client. Okay, and it has two actions: authenticate and logout. Cool. You can provide a user service in the auth plugins options to automatically populate the user upon successful login. Yeah, so I already did that. So once they're logged in, we should get access to the user. Okay, how are we going to do that? And let me make sure we're in there. Okay, so we've added Vuex. Now let's get login going. So if I look at my app.vue, it's got a lot going on in here. I think I actually don't want a navigation drawer, so I'm going to get rid of that. We will have the toolbar up top. Get rid of like all the buttons inside the toolbar, so we just have like a basic toolbar. We'll have the content, and then we don't want a navigation drawer on the right. Cool. And then copyright 2018, made with heart. Made with love by CJ. Cool. Let's see what we got. Yeah, so that's down there. Just a basic app with like a nav bar up top. And then if we look at our router, it has two paths, home and about. If we look at our views, there is home. And that just has that quote right at the center. Let's take a quick break. Oh, thanks, Kaizen. It says fresh cut, looks G. Thank you very much. Cool. So let's do this. So on the home page, we will display like a link, a button to the login page, and then later on we'll add logic that if you're already logged in, like redirect to the list of boards or something like that. Okay, so let's get rid of this block quote and that image. And then we can just use a v-button. It says go to login. Cool. So I'm going to click that and then go to the login route. So let's create a new view called login.view. And let's get rid of these default styles on the home page. So login will just be super basic like that. We will need a script tag. Yeah, name is going to be login. And let's create a basic login form. So we'll check out the Vuetify docs and go to their components. We'll go to inputs and controls, and then forms. And then, yeah, we just want something super basic like that. So, well, actually, we need to sign up first before we can even log in. So I'll do that, but let's just get this basic form. And let's rename this to sign up for now. Sign up. And then right in the center, we can throw that form. And let's create some data. So data is a function that returns an object. And data will have a user, and the name of this is now sign up. A user is an object that has a username, which starts off as empty. It has a password, which starts off as empty. They have a display name, which starts off as empty. They have a image URL, which starts off as empty. It's there. Cool. Let's double check our schema. So we username, password, display name, image URL. Cool. And we could probably also do like a confirm password, so they have to enter their password twice. Cool. And so we'll have a text field for user.username. We'll add some validation. Username rules. Label will be username. We then need password. The model is user.password. The rules, I guess we'll just have a basic not blank rules. Maybe we can reuse the rules. We'll see. The label here will be password, and type will be password, so that we get the nice little stars when they're typing it in. And then this will be where they confirm the password, so user.confirm password. Label will be confirm password. So we've got username. Let's throw display name up at the top, my username. So this will be user.displayName. Display name required, and then lastly we need image URL. And we'll throw this right below the password. URL. All right, what do we got? And actually, we need to link to this page. So sign up is a component here. We need to add a route for it. So in our router, let's get rid of the about page. It does nothing for now. Gone. And so in our router, we want /signup. The name will be signup, and the component will be sign up. And we need to bring that component in. So import signup from views /signup. Cool. And then on the home page, let's change this button to say sign up. And we can just go to the route with the name sign up. What are we complaining about? vbind directives require an attribute value. What? Unexpected. This should work. But 2 is typically an attribute for like a router link, and Vuetify includes this on a lot of different components where you can actually turn that thing into a router link. Let's just see if this works. So on our nope. Oh, these need to be single quotes. That's why. So it says when we click this button, go to the sign up route. Yeah, and if you see down in the bottom left there, when I hover over, it goes to /signup. So when I click on it, cool, there's our form. Yeah, and I do see in the chat we need to basically add like a submit button to the form. So on sign up, at keydown.prevent enter. So that's basically saying when they press key down, well, when they press enter, prevent the form from submitting. I will definitely do that. So let's also add just a nice little button. We'll do a v-button. Here we're going to say sign up. Yep, okay. I just thought of something like signing up is actually going to be creating a user, right? So we're essentially making a post request to the user's route. So I'm going to have to add that in my Vuex store. But we're getting the basic form working. So sign up is there, and then type will be submit, and we'll have an @submit on the form. So we want submit to prevent the default action, and we'll say sign up, and we'll do what Kaizen is suggesting there. So on the form, do @keydown .prevent .enter. Or are you saying that this should replace that? I guess I've never done this before. I'm thinking this would be whenever the enter button is pressed, submit the form. But please, Kaizen, clarify what that thing is doing. But I'll just leave this for now. So when they submit the form, we'll call the signup function. So now in our component, we need a signup method. Okay. And then we also need the validation rules. So basically all of these just can't be empty. And then confirm password, we need not empty. We need confirm password rules. So we'll have rules that make sure that it is the same as the one above it. Okay, so on here we need not empty rules. And if we look at Vuetify, rules is an array that accepts the thing that's being validated. So in this case, it's just going to be a function that accepts like value. And we'll say, yeah, so if not value, we'll say cannot be empty. And this should be value. Cool. So by default, if we tab out of it, cannot be empty, cannot be empty. And then now we need the confirm password rules. So this takes in the confirm password. And so here's a cool tip about your data function. It actually accepts a parameter called VM. This is the view model, and you have access to all of the data on your view model. So what we can do is we can say if confirm password is equal to vm.password. So this would be whatever they typed in the password field. Cool. So if that's true, then we're good. Or we send back password must match. Let's try it. What am I doing wrong? Triple equals, I think. Not quadruple. Oh, I need a colon there. Okay, so username w3cj, display name cjr, password 123, confirm password 1234, 123, image URL. So this is not working. Let's look at our dev tools, make sure nothing weird's going on. Property or method valid is not defined on the instance but referenced during render. Where are we using valid? Oh, vModel equals valid. Let's see how that's used in the Vuetify docs. Valid, false. So we can, in our submit function, we should be able to tap into valid, and if that's true, then we know that everything is valid on the form. Okay. Username, display name, password 123, confirm password 123. Oh, it needs to be vm.user.password. Hey, Chad. Kaizen saying enter button doesn't then submit the form, neither clears it. Okay, so if I just put that next to my @submit, it should, what we're saying is if they accidentally press enter, it won't submit the form. Let's try it. If we do keydown.prevent.enter. Cool. So if I press enter, cool, form isn't submitting. Username, display name, password 123, confirm password 123, they match. Sweet. And then we need an image, and then when I click sign up, this function should run. So we'll say if this.valid, log the form is valid. And then we'll have to add our user service and get that to create and everything. And let's also only enable this button if the form is valid. So we'll bind disable to be not valid. So if the form is not valid, disable the button. Is it disabled? Cool. Yeah, so by default, button is disabled. And then we can do this. Sign up 123, 123. Image URL. Let's go to GitHub. Grab the image from there. Cool. Copy image address. Throw image URL in there, and then now the form is valid, and I can click sign up, and the form is valid. Cool. So now we actually need to add the user service to the Vuex store so that we can create a user. Let's take a quick break. Okay, so over here, we'll look at the service module API. Each service comes loaded with a default state. Cool. And then there are mutations, which actually will call the API. If we look at just the general installation, I should be able to do service and then users. So let's do this. So in our Vuex store, we also get back service from Feathers Vuex, and we'll add a plugin, which is service users. Cool. I believe actually let's double check. If we look at the auth module, does it have a sign up action? No, it just has authenticate and log out. So we actually need to create the user with the user service, and then we'll need to call authenticate. Okay. If we look at common patterns, I believe you can do instance defaults, and there we can actually specify like a default user. Let's see how that's used though. Actions return, store records. Ooh. Basic data modeling with instance defaults. So here's the other cool thing. You can create like an instance of a user, and then when you say, actually I think this is what I want to do, because when you say .save, it actually calls the API to create it. So do you find yourself spending time writing defaults into your form components? Maybe you wrote a utility yourself or found one, blah, blah, blah. Instance defaults. Okay, so how do we then use it? It's somewhere, but oh well, let's do this. So on our users in the store, should be able to do this. What's this complaining about? Oh. Yeah. Cool. So we can actually pull this from the form that we created. And so all of our defaults are going to look like this, except for confirm password. We'll have to have some custom logic for that. So username, password, display name, and image URL. So by default, a user instance has everything blank. And this should show us how to create one. Okay, so we can do this, I believe, inside of our component. So we've got our user service, great. Now inside of sign up, if it's valid, then we can say user is the instance that we want to create, and then we can say lowercase user is going to be a new user, and then we'll pass in this dot user. And I'm hoping that it'll ignore the confirm password field and just pass in password. So that creates an instance of a user. And then I believe we can do like .save. Let's look at models and instances API. Yeah, so .create actually. So let's try it. So then if we do user.create, Can we do like a dot then on it or something? So creates the to-do on the server using the instance data. You might not ever need to. That's a typo. I should fix that. And yes, Chad, I am using VS Code now, or trying to. It seems to be working out pretty well. But instead use the save, let feathers, Vuex, call create or patch. Yeah, so let's just do that. So if we say .save, it will know that the thing isn't created yet, so it should be able to create it on the server. I'm curious though, like, is this going to return a promise? Yes, here we go. Dot then. So, because basically what I want to do is after the user is created, then we'll redirect to the login page. So, dot then, we get the user. And we should be able to do like this. And then do this dot $ router dot push / login, and we'll have to create that route. Let's also like log the user, make sure it actually got created, and that does not need it. Oh, that should be there. Cool. We also have access to like is create pending from the store. So like when it's creating, we can show like a little spinny bar. Let's try to do that. So is create pending is going to be on the user's store. Can we do like, is there like a map state? Basically we want to, yeah, service state. We want to take the is create pending from the user's store and use it inside of our sign up component. Let's see, can we search for map state? No map state, common patterns. Yeah, map state. Okay, so that's how you do it. You say the name of the service and then which thing that you want. So in our signup component on computed, we can say map state, and the state that we want is create pending. And that's going to be from the user's service. And then we need to import map state from Vuex. So import map state from Vuex. And so that should give us access to, let's just call this loading. So now in our UI, we'll say v if not loading, show the form. Otherwise, we'll show a little spinny bar instead of the form. So let's go to Vuetify. Let's go to their progress. And yeah, we want one of these. Let's use a nice like blue one. I like the size of this purple one. Let's use this purple one, but then we'll make it blue. Primary, so it'll use the theme's color. So color is primary, and then we only want to show this so v-if loading. Okay. So we've got some errors. Unexpected token, comma. That's good to go. missing a curly brace. There we go. Okay, so we click the sign up button. If everything was valid, we're going to create an instance of a user. We're then going to save that user, which should call our API. And while this is happening, loading should be true because it's creating. And then after that, we're going to redirect to the login page. Okay, before I do this, on my backend, we can actually enable like logging. So let's go into, I think it's, hooks and then logger. And let's see. This debugs the service call. Oh, it should log. Okay. So if we look at our back end, that's good to go. Front end, good to go. Let's try it. All right, I'm gonna keep the back end logging while I do this. Let's make sure, are there any errors? Property method loading is not defined on the instance, but referenced during render. Maybe I have that flipped, like in here. Yeah, so loading should be is create pending from users. Okay. All right, let's try. Username W3CJ. Do the curly brace colors match up? Yes, they do. I think for Atom there is a package called Swackets, and I think in VS Code it has like a really unoriginal name like bracket color matcher or something like that. But yeah, you can find it in the extensions store. But yeah, it's pretty sweet. See, like yellow matches with yellow, blue matches with blue. It does the same thing for parentheses. It's pretty sweet. Okay, so username W3CJ, display name is CJR, password is 123, and then image URL, grab that from GitHub. Copy image address. We will paste that in there. Moment of truth, sign up. I think it worked. So if for whatever reason the logging on the back end isn't verbose, but I'll see if I can fix that. But we created a model. Its password is blank. That's not good. Oh, it could be because the password is hashed on the back end by default. Cool. I think we got created. I have this thing called Mongotron. It's a visual Mongo viewer. So let's see if our user is actually in there. This is Trello clone server, and then we have our users collection, and there I am. Look at that. And you can see that by default, it hashes the password, has all the right fields. Yeah, this is awesome. So just until this point right here, this is like a tutorial with implementing login with Feathers.js. Okay, so, or implementing sign up and login. Okay, so we have signed up. Now we need a login page. So let us do that. Cool. So we need a new view. Let's call this login.view. We're going to need a template. And we will, let's copy what we have for sign up. It's just going to be a lot simpler. So the button will say login, and then we really only need two fields. We need username and password. Oh no. Oh no. Okay, so we've got password, we don't need display name, and then we just need username. And the event will be login. Cool. And then we'll have a very similar data. It'll just be a lot simpler. Wait, did I copy the whole script? No, let's copy the whole script. So Our user just needs a username and password. We only need the not empty rules. This component is called login. We'll figure out what is the pending state for being authenticated. We'll pull that in. And then we'll have a login method, which if the form is valid, meaning all the fields are there, then we're going to need to call authenticate. Okay, so let's check the docs for Vuex. Cool. So if we look at the auth module API, is authenticate pending? So we definitely want that. That's going to be essentially our loading. And this will be coming from auth. So this will show the spinny bar when they're logging in. And then we have an action called authenticate. And so instead of map state, well, we do need map state because that's for that'll load the logging thing, the loading thing. But we also need map actions so that we can pull in the authenticate action. So from auth, we want, I think I can just do authenticate like that. We'll see. And then I should be able to call authenticate. So if we look at the Feathers.js docs for client authentication, there is the authenticate method, but I believe, yeah, because we're using the local strategy, it's going to look like this. Cool. So if the form was valid, we're then going to say this dot authenticate, strategy is local, email, well, not email, username is going to be this dot username, password is going to be this dot password, because that's what they entered in the form. And then they are logged in. Logged in. Otherwise, there was an authentication error. Okay, let's try it. So now we should have the login page. Oh, we need to add that route. So, sorry, here. So on our router, we also need a login page. Name will be login, component will be login, and then we need to import the login component. Cool. Okay, so now we can try to log in. So username, password, go. Something happened. This dot authenticate is not a function. Oh, that's why. So, sorry. I put it under computed. This needs to be under methods. Cool. Because basically this takes the authenticate action defined on the auth module and makes it a method so that when I say this dot authenticate, it's actually calling the authenticate action from the auth module. Whoa, stop that. Try again. Bad request, missing credentials. Let's store this in a variable. Oh, this dot user. Yeah, and actually let's just do this. We can spread this dot user. Because, just to clarify, before I had this dot username, it's this dot user dot username and this dot user dot password. But since I want both of those properties, I can just do this dot user and then spread its properties into this object. Cool. Let's try again. W3CJ, password, login. We're logged in. Okay. And actually, so we can see if we look at application. Yeah, Feathers actually creates a JSON web token, and we're now logged in. So these are all other things, but cool. Yeah, we're logged in. Too easy. So now that we're logged in, we should redirect to the boards page where you display all of the users' boards. Let's look at our README because we've done a lot without checking things off. So let's redirect here. So once you're logged in, we're going to do this $router.push, and we want to go to boards. So boards should be the page that lists all of your Trello boards. And then let's create that view. Again, a very similar template. Everything's like centered. We'll just show a spinny bar for now. And yeah, we'll add the route. Component will be boards. We'll then import the boards plugin. Cool. So again, once we log in successfully, we should get redirected to the boards page, and then I just have that spinny bar there. Emmy says, "I never understood the spread until just now." Glad to hear it. And let's just review it because it's really useful, and you see it a lot in like React code and like modern JavaScript code. But I did this for login. Essentially, can I undo? No, keep that there. Oh God, go do. Oh well, I can re-add that code. But essentially, what I wanted was I need these two properties, username and password, inside of this object. And you can do it manually. When you do it this way, basically you're creating a username property and setting it to this.user.username. You're creating a password property and setting it to this.user.password. But if you use the spread operator, you basically say, take all of the properties inside of this object and add them to this object. Pretty nifty. And then now this object will have username and password from the user. And then we can do this $router.push boards. Cool. All right, let's look at our check thingy. So we are now logging in on the client. I think one thing I want to do is detect if you're logged in and then redirect to the boards page if you already are, because right now, if we go to the home page, there's a sign up button, and we don't want that. We basically, if we're logged in, just redirect to the boards page, and also we'll add a sign up and a login button. So on the home page, you got two buttons, login and sign up, but we should be able to detect if you are already logged in, then redirect. So let's do this. In our app.view, this is our top level component. Let's get rid of all this extra stuff because I removed a lot. So don't need drawer or tipped or, yeah, we don't need any of this. Cool. But I do basically want to say when the app.view is mounted, attempt to log in. Like if there's already a token in the browser, try to log in. If login works, then redirect to the boards page. Otherwise, just stay wherever you are. So we have our mounted method, And we essentially want the same authenticate method from Vuex, and we want that in our app.view. So in our app.view, we're going to do map actions, put it on methods. Oops. So we want from the auth module, we want authenticate. And again, here's the use of that spread operator. Basically, map actions returns all of these functions, and then it just puts them as properties on this object. So grab that action, and then now when we are mounted, we'll do this dot authenticate. And I'm pretty sure if you do authenticate without any parameters, it'll attempt to use the existing JSON web token. And that's basically what we want, because if they're already logged in, we don't want them to have to type in their username and password again. So this should do the thing. Let's actually copy our code from login. So basically, when the entire app is mounted, we will attempt to authenticate using actually the strategy let's do it with no options, and then if it doesn't work, we'll probably have to add strategy JWT. Otherwise, there's an error and you just stay where you are. So yeah, I think it works. So check it. So when it goes to the home page, it automatically redirects to boards. That's awesome. Okay. So now we can start working on the back end, add the boards service to the server. So if we look again at our entity relationship diagram, a board has an owner ID, and then eventually we'll add member IDs, which is like an array of IDs. So Kaizen is saying add a before create on the router path and before. Wait, do you mean? Oh, you mean before enter? So we could do that. Let's take a look. So we look at our router. Yeah, we could do a before enter on the home path and basically do the same thing. Only thing I'm worried about, well, not worried about, is how do we get access to authenticate from the store? I guess we could import the store in directly. I think there is a before route enter on home. I'm going to leave this like this. Well, actually, it does make sense to put it on before route enter, because what if it's not when the app first loads? What if they like log out and then they try to go to the home page? Yeah, we need to move this. I think I should be able to import the store directly and just say like store.auth or store.actions.auth.authenticate, I believe. Let's try it. Okay, so in our router, on home, we'll say before enter. Actually, this is sweet. So because I'm using code, I have these all these plugins that are suggesting, and it knows that I'm inside of a router, and it can suggest that. So before route enter, what options do I get? To, from, next. I believe this we should be able to call, almost like express middleware, call the next function if they're not logged in, or update who it is. But regardless, let's change this. So basically, we want to do this in our before route enter. We'll need to update where we're actually getting authenticate from. We can get rid of map actions. And then let's import the store in here. So import store from store. And then I think store.actions.auth.authenticate. What is this complaining about? expected parentheses around arrow function. Cool. And I don't want to push. I think I want to say next is boards. Let's take a quick break. Ooh. Okay, so what Kaizen is saying, I can do next boards, and then if it failed to log in, then I can do next to / login. And essentially this our home page has, if I'm doing it this way, then the home page kind of it's just there to decide to redirect. I'll probably have to put like a sign up button on the like the toolbar or something like that. Let's see if this works though. So cannot read property auth of undefined, so that didn't work. Let's see what the store. Let's see their docs to see if we can access the thing directly. Now in your components, you'll have access to the Feathers Vuex object, which contains references to the models class. Basically, I want to be able to call authenticate directly. I don't know how. So how, let's see how to access a plugin from a Vuex store. So Vuex store plugin. Committing mutations inside plugins. Cool. But how do I access the plugins? I think this is the main issue. Like, how do I get access to that special plugin inside of my route here? Let's just try to log store.plugins. And then just call next. Undefined. Let's just log the store. Will we do we have actions? We have underscore actions. Is there a dispatch? Yeah, so we should be able to do a dispatch. Let's see if this works. If I do store dot dispatch auth / authenticate. It worked. So when you go to the home page, if you are already logged in, redirect to the boards page. Let's just clear out our cookie or our token, and then make sure. So if we go to the home page, whoa. Oh, I know why. So it's there, and then I think it's also in cookies. Hard refresh. Cool. So when I try to go to the home page, it automatically redirects to login. Let's add like a little sign up button in the toolbar. We can get rid of these buttons here. Actually, we'll put both of those buttons in the toolbar. And here we'll just throw like an H1 loading, because the home page literally will only display for like a split second until they are logged in. So on app.view in the toolbar, let's look at the Vuetify docs for how to put buttons in the toolbar. link 1, link 2, link 3. So v toolbar items. And then throw those in there. I believe we want a v spacer to push it all the way to the right. Yeah. And we'll also add a nice little title. Trello clone. Cool. So Trello clone, we can go to the sign up page, we can go to the login page, we can log in. And when we log in, that gets loaded there. Cool. I think the other thing I can do is I can actually bring in whether or not the user is logged in to the app component and then decide whether or not to show these buttons. Let's do that. So if we look at the docs for auth module API, payload. So if payload is defined, then that means that the user is logged in. So we should be able to use map state on our app.view. So in app.view, let's import map state from yeah, and good call. So basically, Kaizen just mentioned we need to say same thing for boards. Like if you go to the boards page, if they're not logged in, redirect to the login page. But let's just do this real quick. So bring in map state. We'll then have computed, and we will do map state, and we want from auth, we want payload. And actually, let's say user is payload. So we're only going to show these items if there is no user. Cool. And we should be able to, in our router, before route enter, make sure that the user exists on boards. So cool. So if you are logged in, and actually we should be able to just access the, you could say like if the user exists, then do that, because we don't want to attempt to authenticate again. So let's just log the store. We should get access to like store.state. So store getters users / current. Yeah, cool. Huh, cool. So I should be able to say store.getters user / current invoked. So user is going to be that. And we'll say if there is a user, then we'll do next. Else, we'll go to the login page. Actually, no. I think I actually do want to authenticate, because if a user types in this URL directly and like that's the first URL they load, then we want to actually attempt to log them in. What's this complaining about? Trailing spaces not allowed. Really? Oh, there's spaces afterwards. Whoa, what's up with all those spaces? Okay, cool. And let's add a log out button if they are logged in. So if there is not a user, then show login and sign up. And if there is a user, then we're going to show the logout button. And then we'll just have a logout method here. How long have I been streaming? An hour and 30 minutes. Great. We have not done anything with the Trello board yet, but it's going to go so fast. I swear it's going to go so fast. We got login working. I don't know. I'm prepared to stream until like midnight if I have to. You may not be able to watch, but you can come back. So when we click, we'll call logout. And let's see, this is log out. And so now there should be a logout button. Cool. Actually want to do flat. Is that a thing? Yeah. So you are logged in. You should be able to click log out. We now need to map the logout action. Whoa. Map actions. So then we need methods. We're going to map the log out action from auth. I think that's what it's called. Let's look at their docs. So there is log out, and we should be able to just call log out. And well, we want to call log out and then redirect to login. I don't think it'll do that automatically. We could do a watch on user. Let's just say, let's do this. We'll call this one auth logout from logout. And then we'll have our own method logout that does this.auth logout. And then this.$router.push login. Okay, click the logout button. Goes to the login page. We can sign up, we can log in, W3CJ, password, submit. Yes! Okay, so we're now logged in. Finally, we can get to actually working on creating a Trello board. Okay, so we need a boards service on the back end. Let's close all of this other stuff for now. And we'll minimize the client. And so on the server side, we want to generate a boards service. So let's do that. Cool. So we're in the server directory. We can do Feathers.js service. And then we'll say use Mongoose. The name of the service is going to be boards. We'll register the service on /boards. Yes, this service requires authentication. You must be logged in to request boards. Cool. And so that generated it. And if we look over here, now we have a boards model, and we also have a boards service. Cool. So let's update our model to match the schema we defined. So let's open that up. A board has a name, a background, an owner ID, and then member IDs. So board has a name, type is string, and it is required. It also has a background. That's just going to be text. It also has an owner ID. This is where we'll go to the Mongoose docs. Type is not a string. Let's go to the Mongoose docs because we want to associate this with the users table. Mongoose docs. I think they showed here populate. Yeah, so it's not going to be an array, but we can just say user ID is an object ID reference. And the reference is users. So every board will have an owner ID that is the person that created the board. And then we also need, I think I called it members. What did I call it? Member IDs, yeah. Let's take a quick break. And member IDs is going to be an array of user IDs. So essentially, for any given board, multiple people can be added to this members array, and then they'll have access to that board. Cool. So that's great. Now we need to do some things. So we need to basically say, when a board is created, associate the currently logged in user as the owner creating the board. So for that, we can use Feathers authentication hooks. I have it open somewhere, or I thought I did. Yeah, Feathers authentication hooks. And so this has built-in hooks we can use, which is things like associate current user. So the associate current user before hook is similar to the query with current user, but works on the incoming data. So when we're creating a new board, this will automatically set the owner ID field as the currently logged in user. So let's do this. And if we look at the board's hooks, we can bring in the hooks there. And we can say before create. Whoa. The editor's trying to be a little too helpful. Okay, so the ID field, that should be owner ID. So ID field, the ID field on your user object. So actually that's underscore ID, so we don't need to specify that because that's by default. And then as the ID field for a user that you want to set on your resource. So this as is going to be owner ID. So now when a board is created, owner ID will automatically get set. Wemo is asking, what did I use to create the Trello clone ERD? So to create this file, I used Lucid Chart. Let me show that real quick. It's a pretty sweet tool. Lucid Chart. I thought I was logged in. Log in with Google. Cool. And I did just like a super basic ERD. Like they have the ability to do like multiple columns. So you can do like primary key, foreign key, the name of the field, the type. I just did one with like super basic, just the names of the fields. And then once you have this, you can draw arrows between entities to create like many to many or one to many. And then on any given one, you can change like what's the starting and what's the ending. It's pretty sweet. You can also do flowcharts and stuff like that too. Okay, so we've got the associate current user. So when a user creates a board, they'll get added as the owner. Cool. I think later on we will restrict to, actually let's do this. We'll go ahead and add it. So in here there's also restrict to owner. So for find method calls and patch, update, and remove, only the owner of that board can request it. We'll add this right now. Later on, when we start working on that members field, it's going to be a little bit more complex because we can't just look at the owner ID. We have to look at that array to see if the user is inside of that array. But we'll go ahead and set this. So before find, owner ID. So before you find, you can only get boards where you are the owner. If you get a single board, you can only get boards where you are the owner. If you update a board, you can only update a board where you are the owner. If you patch, you can only patch where you are the owner. And if you remove, you can only remove where you are the owner. I probably could just create a single array and set it on all of these because it's the same hooks. I'll just leave that for now. Cool. Okay, so we've got our boards service. We went ahead and set up the model. It has all of the stuff that we need. Now we can hook it up to the front end. Let's look at our README. Cool, yeah, and Wemo just mentioned in the chat a video idea would be designing databases. Definitely, yeah, because I spent probably at least 30 minutes like just thinking about what I wanted to build and making sure that like these were the relationships I want. I'm pretty sure this is gonna work. But yeah, like this is a skill in and of itself to just decide how you're gonna structure the data. Okay, so we now have the boards service. Now let's work on the front end. So we want to be able to list and create boards. So let's do that. Let's close our server-side code. And then on the client, let's go into our store and we're going to add that service. So just like we added the user service, we're going to add the boards service. And then instance defaults, we have the name, the background, and what else? I think that's it, because these other things we aren't going to be touching. Okay, so now in boards.view, when the page loads, we need to request all of the boards for the current user. So let's do this. The name of this is boards. We'll have our mounted method. And then we need to bring in the find all action from the boards service. So we're going to import map actions. It's either, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's an action. Maybe it's a getter from Vuex. Let's look at the Feathers Vuex service module API. Service actions find. So find will find all of the boards for that. So we should be able to map actions, I believe, with like boards/find. Let's try it. And so on our methods, we're going to map actions for boards. We want to bring in find. And so when it's mounted, we'll say this.find. And actually, yeah, querying with find and pagination. The find action queries data from the remote server. It returns a promise that resolves to the response from the service. However, because this service is there, I believe there's a way to use like a computed property that is set to the data from the service. So question in the chat from Justin, is there a reason that I chose to use MongoDB and Mongoose versus PG and SQLize? Mainly because I might want to change up these relations later. And if I did SQL, it would have mostly been set in stone from the beginning. But Mongoose is, because it's non-relational, it's a little more forgiving if I decide to change things later. Let's look at this. I'm pretty sure I saw this earlier. So reactive lists with live queries. Yes. Okay. And essentially what this will allow us to do is have a computed property that automatically lists all of the boards. And if any new boards are created, we'll automatically show those too. So let's do this. So we need to do map getters. And that's going to be on computed. So computed, we will map getters. We want boards. And we're going to do find boards. Should be an object. Yeah, that's a typo. I'm pretty sure that needs to be an object. Okay, and then we'll have a computed property that will just be boards. And then we'll do this dot find boards. The query, just no query at all, because we just want to find all the boards. And because we already set it up to only query for ones that we own, that automatically happens on the back end. And oh, I see. So find appointments, we still need to map that action. Actually, I think we need to do that instead of a computed property. So we still need methods, and that's going to be map actions with this. And then the computed property will call find boards and return data. And let's also do, so we're mapping, we want this to be map actions. And then we also want to map state, because in the boards store, we should have access to whether or not it's loading. So is find pending. So also on computed, we want map state boards. And no, let's do this. It's an object. Loading will be is find pending. So here we'll say b-if loading, show that. And then otherwise, for now, let's just show a div with the, or we'll show a pre with the boards inside of it to see if it actually worked. And so this will be v-if not loading. Okay. Says my server shut down. Oh, cannot find module Feathers authentication hooks. I definitely need to install that. And Justin's asking, so you didn't want to drop and alter all the time on stream. Yeah, and probably in the future, I might add new features and change up the relationships a bit. Yeah, mainly I just did it for flexibility. In the real world, like if this was a legit project, I would probably use SQL, because like there are a ton of relations here, right? Like this entity relates to that entity, and that's why you use a relational database. But with Mongoose, we can do associations. So I don't know. I guess I don't have the best reason, but so install Feathers authentication hooks on the server. Cool. So we'll start it back up. It's working. So we'll do a refresh. Actually, if we go to the home page, this .find is not a function, and that's going to be in boards. Oh, wait. Oh, this .find. No, I don't need to do any of this, because it's a computed property that'll automatically find the boards. Let's look at Vue. Look at our app. We'll look at boards. Boards is currently undefined. Let's double check in here the find action. let's just see real quick. So if I actually do create a mounted event, can I call this dot find boards? Let's take a quick stretch. I mean, I feel like I want to dot then it and like look at the data. Let's do this. We'll make this async. We'll await this and then log the boards. See you later, books. Yeah. It took me a very long time to to implement auth. Okay, so calling it directly works. I, however, wanted to do what they were specifying here, like in their common patterns. Actions return reactive store. Okay, so I think this is how to do it. So here's what we'll do. So our computed is going to be this. So we need to also map getters. And we want boards, and this should be find boards in store. And then here we'll say boards are find boards in store and grab the data. And then we do want to map the actions find boards to find. The to-dos array is not a reactive list, but the individual records are. And I think we have to just call this initially, like in created or mounted, so that it starts watching. This dot, not that, not that. This dot find boards with an empty query, and then boards is response.data or response. Okay. Hey. Property or method loading is not defined on the instance. Oh, I guess I got rid of that. So we also want to map state on computed. And there is a, on the service API, there is find pending. We'll call this loading. Okay, so we're getting data and we're listing it out here in an array. So next thing I want to do is just create like a nice little create form thingy. So let's do this. We'll have like a card with a simple little form inside of it. Yeah, I mean, something like this will work. So let's do this. So I do have a V layout column. We've got our vflex. So I want this to take up 4 columns with no offset. So we get, cool, it's got a little card. It is centered, that's okay though. No media, just a title that says create board. Cool. And then here, this will just say create. Color will be secondary. What do we get? Cool. And then we'll add a simple little form inside of it. Vcard title, vcard actions. Is there a vcard body? Vcard media. Let's see how they're doing like this. Like, where would I put that text? Unlimited music now. Yeah, let's do this. So we've got div class headline. This will say create board. And then below that, we're going to put a nice little form inside of here. Let's copy our form from login because it's super simple with just 2 columns. Wait. So v if not creating, that should be okay. Create board will be the function that we call. This will be board.name. Label will be name. What else do we have on a board? A board has a name, a background. That's it. So we'll have name and then background. Board.background. This will say background. And then well, let's create our data. So we need valid, which initializes to false. And we also need creating, which we'll pull that in from the store, but initially this is going to be false. What errors do we got? Not empty rules. We should probably define that elsewhere and then just like pull it in. But for now, we'll just do this. And then we'll have the board, which has a name and a background. Cool. We do, for whatever reason, this needs to be on the next line. And that shouldn't say login, that should say create. See it. So it is display flex. Wait, yeah, so on vcard title, can we add column? We don't want to flex direction column. Yeah. How do I add flex direction on a vcard title? I thought it was just column. So if we look at, oh, I think that's the issue. Yeah, v layout row wrap. Wait, no, because the card is here. And then the card just has, do I have to add primary title? Nope. I don't want to just add an inline style, but I think I will. Flex direction is column. Yeah. Okay. So want to create a new board. We'll call this Trello clone because we'll create a board to create the Trello clone. We'll give it a background, and then we'll click create, and that should create it. Let's get that working. So we have the submit event called create board. Let's create that method. And just like when we created a user for sign up, we're going to do a very similar thing. So if this dot valid, meaning they have a name and a background, then we're going to say board will be that, and the board that we're going to create is going to be a new board with this dot board, and then we'll just say board.save. That should automatically create it on the server, and because this is automatically listening, we should see it pop up in the array above. Cool. I think that's it. All right, let's try it. No errors. Name, Trello clone. Let's grab a nice background URL. Isn't there like the Unsplash API? Random query, nature. Well, that's not good. Mountain. Okay, sure. So Trello clone, that's going to be our background URL. Click create. Notice how it automatically shows up in the array up there. It's totally not formatted, but when we clicked create, it created it on the server, and this is a computed property, so it's automatically listening for anything that got created on the server. So that's there. Let's go ahead and clear out the form. So I'll say this.board is an object with an empty name and an empty background. And we do need to bring the, not loading, but we need is create pending from boards. So we're going to map that here. So say creating is that. And so don't need it there anymore. We are going to show the progress bar on the form if they are creating something. So let's try it one more time. Name, test project, background, something from the Unsplash API. Query, awesome. Okay, why not? That will be the background. If I click create, well, it's probably spun for a second. Okay, cool. But now, instead of just showing like the array up here, let's actually show nice little cards for all of our boards. So Let's do this. Basically, instead of a pre, we want to show a v-flex and only if it's not loading. And we're going to do v4 board in boards, and this is going to be, we'll do small 4. Custom elements need, okay, so we need a key, and then the key is just going to be board._id. And inside of there, we're going to have a nice little v-card, v-card. We'll have a v-card title. This will be primary title. We'll have a div with a class of headline. And inside of there, it's going to say board.name. Cool. So those are there. We actually don't want this column. I think we want this as row. Yeah, cool. And instead of 4, let's do 3 so that they are a little bit smaller. Cool. And let's actually show the background image on there. So like this, I guess. So vcard media. I think should be all we need. And that goes above the vcard title. And the source will be bound to board.back. Cool. That's awesome. So yeah, we can create new boards all day. Like, what are we gonna be doing soon? I don't know. Newbie Tuesday. And then we'll grab another random background. Bike. Unsplash like is not giving me any unique random images. Oh well. So that'll be the background. We create it. It automatically pops up. This is awesome. I guess the other thing that's really cool about this is if we have this open in 2 separate windows, if I create it on one side, it'll automatically pop up on both because it's listening in real time with Feathers. So another project, that will be the background. Click create. Boom. It's there. For whatever reason, that image didn't work, but works. It works. Let's take a quick break. Whew. I have been streaming for a long time, I believe. Yeah, a little over 2 hours. I think I'll get creating lists working on the page itself, and then maybe call it there, and then just continue this on either Thursday or next Monday. I did spend a really long time getting auth working, but other than that, it's good. I think I need to add wrap here too to the VA layout. Yeah, so that way it goes to the next line. And maybe I can give these things a little bit of padding. So if we look at the Vuetify docs, there are like, yeah, spacing classes. So, well, I guess I want margin. So if I do like m-2 on here, give it a margin 2. Do I have to give that a class? Examples. Margin all 2. Yeah. Cool. But padding all 2? Yeah, that's wrong, because margin pushes it to the next line. And then I need to make sure I do that on the create one as well. Cool. All right, we need a button to view a specific board. So let's do that. On cards, they have like actions. Like this, vCard actions. So right below that, we will say go. Flat button. Not flat button. Color is primary. Yeah, so Kaizen was mentioning class equals MA2. Apparently, I think that might work too, but if you put it as just a directive, that works as well. Okay, so that has a nice little button, and if I click go, I want this to go to the page for that specific board. Okay, let's create a new view. Let's call it board.view. And I'm going to copy this exactly, but then we'll change up some stuff. Okay, so the name of this is board. We will have loading. We are going to say v4 list in lists, and we'll have to set all of that up. And the key will be list.id. And then on each one, there won't be an image, but we'll show list.name. No actions for now. And then we'll also have a nice little create list form. It'll say create list when we click on it. For vif creating list. And this will be valid list. And the model here will be list.name. Let's look at our ERD. A list has a name. That's it. Create list. If not, valid list. Okay, this will be creating list. And okay, so the data here is a list. List has a name. We're calling this valid list. Okay, so we don't want to find all of the boards. We need to add this route, and one thing we want is a param. So when the board route loads, we need to know the ID of the specific board that we want to view. So let's set that up in router. And let's store this in a function. So we'll call this is logged in, because then we can do this for anything. So we'll have function is logged in. And so you need to be logged in to go to the boards page, but you also need to be logged in to go to the individual boards page. So the name of this will be board, and the path will be boards/ID. So the route with one specific board. And then we need to load the board component. And then in here, whenever it's mounted, we want to want to get board. with this $route.params.id. So whatever the ID of the page that we're on, that's the board that we want to get. And then we'll set the board there. And we want to map action get to be get board from boards. Let's double check that. So get, you pass in the ID. Cool. So that should work. We're going to have access to get board. We'll eventually create list. We'll have to add the list service. We'll have to do that on the back end. But all of the code should be the same. Cool. And then now is get pending, I think, is one that we want. Yeah, because if we're getting a single board, loading should be true. And creating, we'll have to bring in from the list store later on. But regardless, so find boards in store. Maybe it's get board in store. I'm just guessing. And we'll call this, oh, sorry. We get to name this. So this should be get. So we'll say get board in store. And the individual board is going to be this.route.params.id. And that should show the individual board. Okay, let's add like a nice little header up at the top. It's like an H2, and it should be board.name. And then we need to make this button go to that specific board. So let's do that real quick. So on here we have this go button, and we want to say this is to the route with the name board, and our params are going to be an object, and the ID is going to be board._ID. So now if you notice in the bottom left, each one will link to its unique ID, and if we click on it, it goes to the board page with that ID. Let's see what it's complaining about. Can't read property name of undefined. And I believe that's because board didn't exist yet. We need to make sure that, so this is boards. We need to make sure that board is actually loaded. Can't read property data of undefined. I might have to work on, yeah, so we're gonna have to create a thing that brings in lists, all that stuff, but we want to be able to, I guess what I was thinking was, we are, instead of just getting an individual board, we want to like sync with the board, which is why I was trying to do the same thing that we were doing with boards. Let's make sure there's a getter. Service getters. Get, a function that allows you to query the store for a single item. Okay. So get should still give us get boards in store. Let's just log this.route.params.id, make sure that that's actually coming in. Yeah, so we've got the ID. Let's take a quick break. Whew. Let's comment out all this other stuff because I have like the list creation and then trying to repeat over list, but none of that stuff exists yet. So let's just comment that out. Okay, cannot read property data of undefined. So when this attempts to do a get board in store, that's not working. Let's look back at the common patterns. Actions return reactive store records. You must use the find getter as shown in the example. Yeah, here's what I'm gonna do. Instead of like trying to make it reactive, I'm just gonna do a simple get. So we should be able to map the get action. That's great. And then we don't want to do either of those things anymore. And here we'll have data. We'll have board starts off as an object. And then when we get back it, we'll get it back. We'll say this dot board is the data from the response. Okay. There we go. So now that is showing the title of that specific board. If we go back to boards and we go here, it'll say test project. Cool. So let's look at our README. We are creating, adding the owner ID. We are listing and restricting. We are viewing a specific board and restricting. All of that's good to go. And now we want to add lists to the service to the individual board. So I've been streaming for about 2 hours and 20 minutes. I think the last thing I'll do is add lists, and then I'll do another live stream where I allow us to add cards. We've been doing a lot, and this is really fun. Actually, like this is my first time using like Feathers Vuex, and it is awesome. Like I'm writing minimal code inside of my components. It's automatically grabbing data from the service. It's real-time synced. It's pretty great. So let's do this. Let's add a list service to the server. So on the server, we're going to do feathers g service. We use mongoose. The name of the service will be lists. Yes. Yes, require authentication. Okay, so that generated it. Now if we look at our server-side code, we should have, wait, why didn't that work? Model / list dot model. It's not in there. Why not? Super weird. Okay, let me close VS Code. For whatever reason, it's not listed in there. Yeah, there it is. List.model. Don't know why it wasn't there before. Okay, so a list has a name, an order, and a board ID, and then whether or not it's archived. So let's do this. So a list has a name. We can check out our association because basically we want to do this. So a list has a board ID, and that reference boards. And then what else? It has an order. That's just going to be a number. And we'll default it to 0. And then we need archived. This will be a Boolean. It defaults to false. And then I think that's it. Cool. So that is our list model. We are going to want some hooks that only allow owners of a specific board to add a list. I think I'm going to skip that for now and do it next time because it's going to be a little more complicated because the list schema does not have the user ID, so we can't just do an association of the user ID. We have to do something more complex, and we have to say look up the board with this ID of the list that you're trying to create, and does its owner ID match the currently logged in user? If so, allow it. For now, I'm just going to leave this as is. Any user can add lists to any board ID, but we'll update that later on. Okay, so I have the basic list service. That should be all I need. And then back on the front end, let's go into our store, and we're going to add the lists service. A list has a name. What else does a list have? Order, board ID. Whoa. Okay, name, order, board ID. Should be good. Okay, so we've got lists in there. Now we need to bring that into our board component. So, and this is where we can do the whole automatically listening for changes to lists. Yeah, because the query is going to be where the board ID is this specific board ID, so we should only get updates for that. Okay. See how we were doing it in here. So on computed, we're going to map the getters for lists. We will find lists in store. And then the query, and so this is going to be lists. The query will be where board ID is route.params.board ID. Oh no, route.params.id, which is simple as that. Okay, so it's great. So this should be loading board because the get for a single board, that's where that's there. So if loading board or loading lists, and we'll have to bring in loading lists from boards also. Oh, sorry, lists. So map state for lists, and we'll say loading lists is find pending. okay. And then when the page loads, we will also do, oh, sorry about that. We'll also do a find lists in store. Let's double check. Did we have the action? No, we'll need, we'll also need the action for finding lists. So for lists, we will find lists, and that's fine. And then we'll do this dot find lists, and we need to pass in that same query. Where board ID is this dot route dot params dot ID, and we'll say const lists is that. Okay, cool. So lists is a computed property, and now we should be able to show this. So for list in lists, show each list name, and then yeah, let's see what happens. So property method creating list is not defined, so we'll need to add that also. Okay. Cool. So this is the name of the project. We look at boards. It is row. We do want to do like a vflex. So the title takes up the entire row. Cool. And then let's work on creating a list. Well, actually, it should just work because we already set it up. So list has a name. We are going to type the name in. When we click save, it should just get added, and we should see it pop up. Okay, create a list. To do. Create list. It broke. Property method create list is not defined on the instance but referenced during render. So the method is create list. Oh, create list. So submit, or yeah, so the submit of the form needs to be create list. And creating list, are we bringing that into? Yeah, so is create pending. Okay, let's try again. So create a list called to do, create list. Refresh. Don't know if it worked. let's check Mongotron real quick and see if the data is in there. So let's refresh our collections. So we have users, we do have boards, but we do not have lists. Let me just kill my client just to be sure. Cool. So create a list with the name to do. My guess is like maybe validation is failing. Let's turn on logging on the server side. So server logger hooks logger.level is debug. Cool. So now if I try to create something, we should see a log of it. Create list. Nope. Let's make sure our method's getting called. break. So let's just log this.list. Oh, did I change the name of valid? Valid list, that's why. Huh. If this.valid list. Okay. It's gonna work. To do, create list. Oh, I need to pass in the current board ID. So when I create the list, we'll say this.list.board ID will be this.route.params.id. To do, create list. Order is required. I thought I gave order a default option though. Let's look at the server. Yeah, order defaults to 0. I guess I still have to specify it. Okay. So let's do name, order defaults to 0, and archived defaults to false. Okay, so to do, create list, cool. Get some errors though. Property or method loading is not defined on the instance but referenced during render. So where are we trying to look at loading? No, so this should be if loading lists, not just loading. Okay, so to do, doing, and done. Create list. Cool. And now we should be able to create a card on each individual list. But I've been streaming for a very long time. I've been streaming for 2 hours and 34 minutes. So I think I'm going to call it there, but I will definitely do another live stream where I finish up this app. We'll be able to add cards. We'll be able to have multiple users logged in. Yeah, it'll be a good time. Let's just do a quick review of everything we did here before we do that. So I'll do a log out. Okay, so first we made it so that you can sign up. So you could create a new user. And actually, this will be interesting because if I create a new user, so username CJ2, let's grab another image. So if I create another user, when I log in, I should have no boards listed because I am a separate user from the other user that was logged in. So if I click sign up, email null already exists. What? There should be no email column. Let's look at authentication. I changed email to be, and if let's make sure our model doesn't have an email column. Users.model. Yeah, there is no. Let's do this. Let's drop all the boards and drop all the users. And then go to sign up. I think what happened was when it initially generated that collection, email was in the model, but now we took it out of there and replaced it with username. Let's double check in our config that nothing else referencing email. Yeah, I think maybe dropping it should fix it. So we can sign up, cool. Now we can log in as that user. And now that we're logged in, we can create a board like my new project. The background will just be this image. We can create it. Cool. We get my new project. Now I can go to my new project, and then I can create a list like to do, doing, and done. Cool. And this is what was broke before. So if I do a log out, I should be able to sign up again. So W3CJ2. I hope this works. If it doesn't, I might have to do some digging. I'm not going to do it now. I'm going to end the stream. But it could be that by default, the authentication like local auth expects there to be an email field, but I thought I changed it. Okay, it worked. So now I should be able to sign in as a separate user. I shouldn't be seeing this board. I think we should be able to see the query that came in. Oh well, I probably should have tested this earlier. But now there are two different users. Oh! They both have the same username. I think that's another issue. The model isn't saying that username is unique. No, it is. Unique true. That should have broke. Oh well. Oh well, I don't know. I am gonna end the stream. Regardless, I'll debug it, figure that out next time. But I can go to a project. I get all of my columns. I am getting you do not have permission to access this, so I don't know. We'll figure this stuff out next time. I used Feathers.js on the back end, so this is a framework for generating apps that use Express and then also real-time communication, so you can create things and then get alerts when things are created. So one thing I wasn't showing is because of the way we have this hooked up, if two users were both logged in at the same time, they would be able to see when new lists get created. So another list. No matter where you are in the world, if you're logged in and you have access to this board, you would see it get created. Or if I go back to boards, I think that's the issue. Like, oh, maybe when I logged out, I didn't clear out the store. Yeah, that was probably it. Because this is a separate user, regardless. So let's create a new board, like new project 2. And then it has like this background image. But if I create that over here, every user logged in gets to see all of the data. Chat is saying it's Mongotron that's buggy and is not displaying the data right. I think I accidentally... Oh. Yeah, because the created at timestamps are exactly the same. Okay, cool. Yeah, I will push this code up to GitHub. I will throw a link in the description below. I guess to review a little bit more, the client is using Vue.js, but I'm also using Feathers Vuex. This package is awesome. It allows us to very easily connect the Vuex store to Feathers.js. So first I create my Feathers client, which just connects to the backend server. And then in the store, all I have to do is specify which service I want to get data from. And then it essentially has like a built-in way of creating models too. So I can say, like, what are the default fields when you're creating a new user or when you're creating a new board? This is all it takes to connect my store to the backend service. And then, for instance, like when I'm signing up, I have some like basic built-in form validation, but I can simply, where is it? Yeah, so here I'm just creating a user as a model. So I'm passing in all the fields from the form. And then when I say user.save, that automatically calls my backend service, creates a user in the database, and then sends me back the data. For login, it has built-in authentication. So after they fill in the login form, I can just say this.authenticate, automatically logs in. When I want to grab all of the boards, that again is just talking to the service. So we have some fancy computed getters where this is where listening for new boards to get created actually works. So by setting this up, whenever a new board is created, the page will instantly show it because I'm listening on this computed property for whenever a new board is created on the server. Again, I'll push this code up. You can check it out. Thanks so much for watching. Justin says, thanks for the stream. Kaizen, awesome stream. Arsalan, thank you, sir. You're also very welcome. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for supporting me. And yeah, as I mentioned, either Thursday or Monday, I'll do part 2 of this stream, and we should get it finished because, I don't know, in 2.5 hours today, we'll be able to do login, creating basic boards and lists. Next time, let's take a look at my README. Next time we will, and actually let's check this off. So we can create lists now. Create and list the list. Next time we'll make it so that only the owner of or members of a board can create lists. Then we'll be able to add cards. Then we'll be able to move cards around, rearrange lists, keep track of all the activities, add comments to cards. It's going to be great. All right, but yeah, thanks again for watching. See you next time. Have a wonderful afternoon, morning, evening, night, wherever you are in the world. I'll see you next time.